The morning flight from Delhi to Mumbai was buzzing with energy. Passengers chatted loudly. Cabin crew hurried through the aisles, and the sound of boarding announcements filled the air. Into this modern crowd stepped a man who looked out of place. His name was Ravi Sharma, about 50 years old. His dark skin carried lines of fatigue. His hair was messy, and his blazer was faded at the edges. Still, there was a quiet dignity about him. With slow steps, Ravi entered the plane, showed his ticket, and made his way towards seat number 17 by the window. Some passengers glanced at him with frowns, while others stared openly. To them, his simple clothes did not match the polished setting of the aircraft. Ravi ignored their eyes, clutching his bag tightly as he sat down. The woman beside him immediately pulled out a scented handkerchief and pressed it to her nose. She looked at him as though he did not belong there. Her expression said clearly, "Is this man really a passenger on this flight?" She shifted uncomfortably, pulling her designer shawl closer around her shoulders. Ravi adjusted his seat quietly, not reacting to her silent insult. His eyes, calm and steady, turned toward the window where the sunlight was streaming through. To him, the sky outside was far more interesting than the judgment inside. From a distance, air hostess Mira had been watching. She noticed the man's shabby blazer and unshaven face, and suspicion clouded her mind. Walking over, she bent down slightly and asked politely, "Excuse me, sir. May I see your boarding pass again?" Ravi smiled gently and nodded. "Of course. Here it is." He handed her the small slip of paper. Mira studied it carefully, her eyebrows narrowing, then glanced at him again. After a pause, she returned it with a forced smile. "Thank you, sir." Without another word, she walked back, though her doubtful eyes lingered. Ravi said nothing. His lips curved faintly, and he returned his gaze to the moving clouds. The woman beside him could not contain her disgust. Turning to Mira, she raised her voice so that others could hear. "Listen, can you change my seat? This man smells strange. I cannot possibly sit like this for the whole journey." Passengers nearby began whispering, some covering their mouths to hide laughter. Mira, looking embarrassed, replied softly, "I'm very sorry, ma'am. The flight is completely full today. There is no other seat available. You will have to adjust for a while." The woman huffed angrily and sat back, muttering to herself. Ravi remained calm, as if her words had never touched him. Suddenly, a voice from 2 rows behind shouted, "Hey, is that you, Ravi?" Ravi turned, blinking in surprise. He did not recognize the man at first. The voice continued eagerly, "It's me, Arjun Malhotra. We studied together in school. Remember?" A faint smile appeared on Ravi's lips. "Arjun," he said softly. "Yes, I remember." Arjun stood up slightly, his face glowing with pride. "Look at you. You were the topper in every exam, always first. And today, what condition have you brought yourself to? Traveling in these old clothes, sitting here in economy class. Look at me. I'm the CEO of a multinational company now, earning lakhs every month." His voice carried more pride than friendship. Passengers nearby leaned closer, curious about the exchange. Some chuckled at Arjun's loud boasting, while others looked at Ravi with pity. Ravi did not react. He adjusted his glasses and said calmly, "It's a long story, Arjun. Maybe one day I'll tell you when the time is right." His quiet voice contrasted sharply with Arjun's proud tone. Arjun smirked. "You were supposed to be great, Ravi. But look at you now. Life really changes, doesn't it?" He shook his head, half amused, half scornful. Ravi simply smiled faintly and turned back to the window. At that moment, a light tremor shook the plane. The seatbelt signs blinked, and passengers stiffened in surprise. The woman beside Ravi grabbed her bag and muttered nervously, "What was that?" The air hostess Mira's voice came through the intercom. "Respected passengers, please remain seated and fasten your seatbelts. We are experiencing light turbulence. There is nothing to worry about." Her tone was calm, but the flicker of tension in her voice was unmistakable. Ravi adjusted his belt silently, his face steady, while around him murmurs of fear began to spread. The turbulence grew stronger. The plane rattled violently, making trays and bags shake. A few passengers screamed. One man cried out loudly, "Are we safe? Someone tell us what's happening." Ravi held the armrest tightly, but his expression remained calm. His eyes moved from the clouds outside back to the frightened faces inside. Beside him, the woman who had once mocked him was now pale, her hand clutching the armrest as if her life depended on it. Arjun, too, looked around nervously, his earlier arrogance fading into fear. Suddenly, the cabin door opened, and Mira rushed out, her face pale and trembling. She raised her voice above the noise. "Please, is there any doctor among you? It's urgent." Gasps filled the cabin. A middle-aged man stood up quickly. "I am a doctor," he said firmly. His name was Dr. Kurandada. He hurried forward, disappearing into the cockpit. The passengers fell into tense silence, their eyes darting between one another. Something was terribly wrong. A few moments later, Dr. Kurandada returned with a grave expression. He spoke loudly so all could hear. "The pilot has suffered a sudden stroke. He is unconscious and cannot fly the plane." His words spread like fire through the cabin. Fear gripped every heart. The turbulence outside grew worse, and the plane dipped slightly, causing screams to rise. Mira's voice trembled as she announced again, "Respected passengers, the situation is serious. Is there anyone here who can fly an aircraft?" Silence filled the cabin. People looked at one another, their faces stiff with terror. The cabin was filled with silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of fear. Children clung to their mothers. Businessmen gripped their seats, and the arrogant pride on Arjun's face had melted into pale panic. Mira repeated desperately, "Please, is there anyone who knows how to fly an aircraft?" Her voice cracked. No one moved. No one spoke. Death seemed too close, and every second of hesitation was heavier than the last. Just then, a quiet voice broke the tension. "I can try," said Ravi. Every head in the cabin turned toward him. The same man who had been mocked for his shabby clothes and smell now sat upright, his eyes sharper than before. There was a strange firmness in his tone, as if he was not asking but declaring. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the whispers began. "This man? He looks like a beggar," someone hissed. "Is this a joke?" shouted another. Arjun shot up from his seat, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Ravi, you? Are you mad? You will kill us all. We don't need experiments here. We need a real pilot, not you." Laughter of fear and anger mixed in the cabin. The woman who had been covering her nose shook her head furiously. "No, no, no. We can't trust him. Not him." Her words echoed the doubt. In everyone's heart, Mira hesitated, torn between the crowd's fear and Ravi's calmness. She took a deep breath and asked, "Sir, do you really know how to fly?" Her trembling eyes searched his. Ravi nodded slowly. "Yes, it's been 10 years since I last flew, but I was once a captain. If there's a chance to save this plane, I have to try." The steadiness of his voice silenced the murmurs for a moment. From the cockpit, Captain Rahul's strained voice called out, "If there is anyone with experience, send him in immediately. I can't hold this alone." The urgency in his tone cut through the doubt. Ravi stood up. His earlier weary steps were gone. Now, his walk carried confidence, strength, and purpose. Passengers stared, wide-eyed, as the man they had ridiculed transformed before them. Arjun sank back in disbelief, muttering, "This can't be real." As Ravi entered the cockpit, his eyes scanned the control panel with familiarity. His fingers trembled for only a second before settling firmly on the controls. He slipped on the headset, his voice steady. "Delhi Control, this is Captain Ravi Sharma. Our pilot is unconscious, requesting emergency landing clearance." At his words, Captain Rahul froze and turned toward him, stunned. "Wait, Ravi Sharma? You mean the same Ravi? Captain Sharma, the legend?" Rahul's eyes widened in recognition. "I read about you in training. You were the one who landed that aircraft 22 years ago in the middle of cyclone. 312 lives saved. They called you the Miracle Captain." His voice carried awe. Ravi's face tightened briefly with the memory. "Yes, that was me. But after a mechanical fault 10 years ago, they suspended me. That day, I lost more than a job. I lost my confidence. Back in the cabin, whispers spread like wildfire. Did he say Captain Sharma? One man asked in shock. The legend? I read about him in the newspapers. The woman who had once mocked him pressed her face into her hands, ashamed. Arjun sat frozen, unable to reconcile the school topper he once mocked with a legend the world respected. For the first time in years, his pride had no words. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Ravi's hands moved with a rhythm that had once been second nature. Rahul, keep the engine steady. I'll take control of descent. Inform ground control, we'll attempt an emergency landing in Mumbai. His calm instructions filled the air. Rahul nodded quickly, relief washing over his tired face. Outside, the storm roared, lightning flashing against the windows. But inside the cockpit, Ravi's voice carried strength enough to steady everyone's heart. In the cabin, the passengers sat in anxious silence. Every shake of the plane made someone gasp. Every dip made someone pray. Children cried softly while mothers whispered prayers under their breath. And yet, slowly a shift began. As they watched the shabby man in the cockpit window, steering their lives through the storm, they felt something they had not expected: trust. The same man they had ridiculed was now their only hope. The plane tilted sharply as strong winds struck its wings. Gasps erupted from the passengers. Luggage shifted in the overhead bins, and a baby began to wail uncontrollably. "We're going to die," someone shouted from the back. But Mira raised her trembling hands and urged, "Please remain calm. The captain is handling the situation." Her words tried to carry strength, but even she could not hide the quiver in her voice. Inside the cockpit, Ravi tightened his grip on the control yoke. His eyes darted across the instruments, reading every signal with precision. "Rahul, adjust flaps 10 degrees down. Reduce thrust slowly." His calm instructions filled the small space. Rahul obeyed instantly, his respect for Ravi growing with each command. "How are you so steady, sir?" he asked in awe. Ravi did not look up. "When fear takes over, you lose the plane. Control the fear, and you control the sky." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating Ravi's face. His once tired eyes now gleamed with sharp focus. Memories of countless flights returned to him. The feel of turbulence, the roar of storms, the weight of lives depending on him. He had thought those days were gone forever, but now, sitting here again, he realized the skill had never left him. His voice deepened with command. "We'll descend through the storm layer. Keep communication open with control tower." Back in the cabin, fear painted every face. The woman who had mocked Ravi earlier now sat clutching her handbag like a lifeline. Tears streaked down her cheeks. "God, please save us," she whispered over and over. Arjun sat stiffly, his knuckles white against the armrest. His earlier pride had shattered into silence. Beside him, a young boy asked softly, "Mama, are we safe?" His mother forced a smile through trembling lips. "Yes, my child, we are safe. The captain will save us." Another violent jolt shook the plane, sending a food tray crashing to the floor. People screamed, and prayers rose louder than ever. Mira tried to calm them, but even she could not hide her tears. She turned toward the cockpit window and saw Ravi sitting steady, unshaken, his hands moving with confidence. For a moment, she whispered to herself, "He's not an ordinary man. He's a savior." In the cockpit, alarms beeped as the storm grew fiercer. Rahul looked panicked. "Sir, if we descend too fast, we'll lose stability." Ravi's voice remained steady. "Trust me, I've been through worse. Hold your nerves." He maneuvered the plane gently, his movements precise, each decision born from years of experience. "This storm is powerful," he muttered, "but not stronger than determination." The control tower's voice came through the headset. "Flight 809, confirm your identity." "Did you say Captain Ravi Sharma?" Ravi pressed the button. "Affirmative. This is Ravi Sharma. We request immediate clearance for emergency landing in Mumbai." The tower paused, stunned. Then came the reply. "Captain Sharma, We have full faith in you. Runway 27 is ready. Weather is clearing slightly. You are cleared for descent. Ravi's lips curved into a faint smile. He turned to Rahul. See? Even the skies are opening for us. Rahul nodded, his fears slowly replaced by admiration. For him, this was more than survival. This was witnessing greatness in motion. He whispered under his breath, "You're a legend, sir." Ravi ignored the praise, focused only on the path ahead. The passengers felt the plane begin its descent. The roar of the engines changed, and their ears popped slightly with the pressure. Whispers of hope rippled through the crowd. Some joined hands in prayer, others closed their eyes tightly. The woman who had insulted Ravi earlier leaned toward Arjun and whispered, "Can he really do this?" Arjun's face was pale, but his eyes betrayed reluctant respect. "If anyone can, it's him," he admitted softly. Mira walked slowly down the aisle, holding the seat backs for balance. Her own fear had not disappeared, but she knew she had to keep the passengers together. "Please keep your seatbelts fastened," she said, her voice firmer than before. "Our captain is guiding us safely." For the first time since the turbulence began, people actually listened. Their trust was shaky, but it was growing, resting entirely on the man in the cockpit who once looked like a beggar but now held their lives with steady hands. The storm outside grew darker. Heavy rain lashed against the windows, and flashes of lightning split the sky. The plane shuddered violently, making several passengers scream. "We're falling," a man cried out. Ravi's voice came calmly through the intercom. "This is your captain speaking. Please remain calm. We are descending through turbulence, but everything is under control." His steady tone was like a rope thrown to drowning men. In the cockpit, Captain Rahul wiped sweat from his forehead. "Sir, the crosswinds are too strong. If we continue, the plane might tilt." Ravi's eyes stayed fixed on the instruments. "Crosswinds can't break a focused mind. Hold the altitude steady. Trust the balance of the wings." His voice carried no doubt, only command. Every second, he was fighting not just the storm, but the fear that threatened to paralyze everyone on board. Back in the cabin, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The woman who had once pressed her handkerchief to her nose now folded her hands in prayer, her lips moving nonstop. Arjun sat frozen, whispering under his breath, "This can't be happening." He was always the topper, always ahead, and even now in the sky, he's proving it again. His words were filled with both awe and shame. Children cried, elders prayed loudly, and yet, every time the plane shook, all eyes moved toward the cockpit door. Somehow, the thought that Ravi was there gave them courage. Mira knelt beside an old lady who was trembling. "Don't worry, Alma. Our captain knows what he is doing," she said gently. The woman gripped her hand and whispered, "If he saves us, I will never forget his name." Inside the cockpit, alarms blared again. Rahul panicked. "Altitude dropping too fast, sir." Ravi's hands moved swiftly across the controls. "I'm taking full command," he said firmly. He gripped the yoke, his eyes blazing with determination. "Brace yourself, Rahul. We're about to dance with the storm." With careful precision, he tilted the plane, countering the violent winds. His movements were sharp yet smooth, like a master violinist commanding his strings. The control tower's voice broken again. "Captain Sharma, weather reports show visibility at 30%. Landing will be extremely risky." Ravi responded firmly, "I've landed in worse. Keep the runway lights at maximum." His voice had no hesitation. In that moment, even the ground officers miles away felt a surge of confidence. They whispered among themselves, "The legend has returned." The plane jolted downward sharply, throwing passengers against their seatbelts. Screams erupted. "We're crashing," someone wailed. Mira grabbed the intercom, her voice shaking but strong. "Please hold tight. Trust the captain. He will not let us fall." Her own heart was pounding, yet she believed every word. Watching Ravi through the cockpit glass had convinced her more than any prayer. Ravi's eyes narrowed as the runway lights flickered faintly through the storm clouds. "There it is," he muttered. "We're almost home." Rahul gasped, "But sir, the wind speed. If we approach now, we'll skid. Ravi's lips curved into a faint smile. That's why we won't land like ordinary pilots. Watch closely. He steadied the plane, adjusting flaps and engine thrust with the precision of a surgeon. The passengers felt the descent grow smoother. The violent shaking lessened slightly. A young boy looked up at his mother and whispered, "Mama, the plane isn't shaking as much. Are we safe now?" His mother kissed his forehead, tears in her eyes. "Yes, my son. The captain is guiding us." Hope spread quietly through the cabin. People who had mocked Ravi now whispered prayers for his strength. In the cockpit, Ravi's hands never wavered. "Rahul, align the nose 5 degrees right. Reduce speed gradually. Prepare landing gear." Rahul followed every word, his respect turning into admiration. "Sir, how are you so calm?" Ravi's voice was steady as stone. Because panic never saved anyone. Faith and focus do. With those words, he tilted the plane gently, aligning it perfectly with the glowing runway ahead. The storm still raged, but inside, a miracle was unfolding. The storm battered the aircraft like a wild beast, shaking it violently from side to side. Lightning flashed dangerously close, illuminating terrified faces in the cabin. Passengers clung to their seatbelts, whispering prayers. The sound of sobs filled the air. At that moment, Ravi's voice cut through the chaos from the cockpit speakers. "This is your captain. Hold tight. We're going in for landing. Trust me." His calm words steadied trembling hearts like a father reassuring frightened children. Arjun's hands trembled as he gripped the seat in front of him. He whispered hoarsely, "If he succeeds, he'll prove to all of us who he really is." The woman beside him, tears streaming down her face, shook her head. "We judge him so wrongly. May God forgive us." Their eyes turned toward the cockpit, where the man they had mocked was now the only one standing between them and death. Inside the cockpit, Captain Rahul's voice cracked with fear. "Sir, the crosswinds are pulling us off the runway path." Ravi's hands moved swiftly, countering every push of the storm. "Hold steady," he commanded. "Landing gear down. Speed at 160 knots. Don't fight the wind, flow with it." His voice was firm, confident, every syllable carrying the weight of experience. Rahul followed his lead without hesitation, realizing he was learning lessons no textbook could ever teach. The plane dipped lower. The runway lights flickered faintly beneath the curtain of rain. Ravi's eyes locked onto them with steel determination. "There's our path," he muttered. "We won't miss it." His fingers adjusted the throttle carefully, balancing speed with stability. Rahul glanced at him in awe. "Sir, I've never seen flying like this." Ravi gave a small smile. "That's because this isn't just flying, Rahul. This is trust in the machine, in the sky, and in yourself." In the cabin, silence fell. Every passenger leaned forward, as though their bodies could help the plane descend. Mira held onto the intercom, but found no words. Her eyes glistened as she whispered softly to herself, "Captain Sharma, please bring us home." The old lady clasped her hands tighter, whispering prayers. The children had gone silent, sensing the gravity in the air. Every heartbeat thudded louder than the storm. The plane roared as it cut through the final wall of turbulence. The tires screeched loudly as they touched the wet runway. For a terrifying second, the aircraft tilted dangerously, making passengers scream. Ravi's jaw tightened, his hands steady on the controls. "Not today," he whispered. With a sharp maneuver, he straightened the plane, guiding it firmly onto the center of the runway. The passengers felt the sudden smoothness. The violent shaking was gone. The storm still raged outside, but inside, a miracle had taken place. Slowly, the plane rolled along the runway, reducing speed until it came to a gentle stop. A stunned silence filled the cabin. No one even breathed for a moment. Then, like a dam breaking, cries of relief and applause erupted. Mira's eyes overflowed with tears. She grabbed the intercom, her voice trembling with joy. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are safe. Our captain has landed us safely." The words were barely out before the entire cabin burst into clapping and cheering. People rose from their seats, tears and smiles mixing together. The same passengers who had doubted and insulted Ravi now shouted his name with respect. Ravi removed the headset slowly. His hands, though steady throughout the storm, now trembled slightly as the weight of the moment sank in. Captain Rahul looked at him with deep admiration. "Sir, that was not just flying. That was artistry. I will never forget what I saw today." Ravi gave a faint smile, his eyes glistening. "It wasn't artistry, Rahul. It was faith. I only borrowed courage from the sky and gave it back when Ravi stepped out of the cockpit." Every passenger rose to their feet. The clapping grew louder, echoing through the cabin like thunder, but this time it was thunder of joy, not fear. People bowed their heads in respect. The woman who had once mocked him now hid her face in shame. Arjun stepped forward slowly, his pride shattered, his voice heavy with emotion. "Ravi, you really are the topper. Even today, you've proved it again. I lost to you." Ravi placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said softly, "Arjun, it was never about winning or losing. It was about believing." The cabin was filled with applause that refused to die down. Every pair of eyes was fixed on Ravi, the man they had once mocked. Tears flowed freely, not from fear anymore, but from gratitude. Mothers hugged their children tightly. Businessmen wiped their foreheads in relief, and elders folded their hands respectfully. The atmosphere had changed completely. Ravi, still calm, stood quietly, his worn blazer hanging loosely from his shoulders. He looked neither proud nor boastful. He simply looked relieved. Arjun stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Brother, forgive me. I spoke with arrogance. I judged you by your clothes, not by your heart or your abilities. You have reminded me today what true greatness looks like." Ravi smiled faintly. "Arjun, life has strange ways of teaching us. Sometimes it strips us of everything so we can discover what really matters. Today, I only remembered who I used to be." His words pierced deeper than any lecture could. The woman who had pressed a handkerchief to her nose earlier now came forward with trembling steps. She lowered her eyes in shame. "Sir, I am sorry. I disrespected you without knowing who you were. I was blind." Ravi looked at her kindly. "You were not blind, madam. You only believed what your eyes saw. But remember, clothes and faces can deceive. A person's worth lies much deeper." His tone carried no bitterness, only quiet wisdom. Mira, the air hostess, could not stop her tears. She bowed slightly and said, "Sir, today you not only saved this flight, but also taught us a lesson we will never forget. You gave courage when even we, trained to be calm, had lost it." Ravi looked at her and said gently, "Child, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act despite fear. That is something you already had inside you." Just then, an airline officer entered the cabin hurriedly. His name was Romesh, and he had been tracking the flight from the ground. He walked up to Ravi and bowed his head deeply. "Sir, the entire control tower watched your landing. Our board has sent me with a message. They want you back. They say the skies still belong to you." A murmur of amazement spread among the passengers. Could it be true? Would the legend return? Ravi looked at Romesh thoughtfully. His eyes softened, but his voice remained calm. "They may have taken away my job once, but they could not take away my courage. I will decide in time, but for now, I'm just grateful we are alive." His words carried quiet dignity. The passengers who heard them nodded in deep respect. Even without a uniform, he already stood taller than any officer in the room. The passengers, one by one, began to stand. At first, it was just Arjun, then the woman beside him, then the entire row behind them. Within moments, the entire cabin rose to their feet. They stood straight, heads bowed, their applause replaced by a solemn salute. It was not commanded, nor was it rehearsed. It rose naturally from the respect in their hearts. Mira's voice trembled as she whispered, "They are saluting you, sir." Every one of them. Ravi looked around the cabin slowly. Men, women, children. Everyone stood with reverence in their eyes. The man who had entered as an outcast now stood as a hero. His eyes glistened, and for the first time in years, a spark of pride returned to his heart. Arjun, still emotional, said softly, "You showed us today that true value never lies in appearance or wealth. It lies in strength of character. Forgive us, Ravi, for forgetting that." Ravi placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not apologize, Arjun. Instead, remember. Remember never to judge a man by his clothes or his silence. Greatness often hides in the simplest places." His voice carried across the cabin, settling into every heart like a seed of wisdom. As the passengers slowly sat down again, the energy inside the plane was transformed. They had boarded with pride, prejudice, and noise, but they would disembark with humility, gratitude, and a story they would never forget. Ravi sat back in his seat quietly, gazing once more at the sky outside. His journey had come full circle, not just in the air, but in his soul. Everyone who had mocked him earlier now looked at him with reverence. For the first time in years, Ravi Sharma was not just a man in old clothes. He was once again a captain, a legend, and a reminder that true worth can never be hidden forever.